I never imagined that one Valentine's Day could dismantle a life I thought was built on trust. The night began with the same romantic promise that so many others whispered about, yet it ended as a revelation so profound it left me reeling. I still recall the electric chill that raced down my spine as I stepped into the dimly lit suite, expecting only the familiar comfort of my wife's arms. Instead, I was met with a scene that would forever alter the course of my life. My name is Nathan. I once believed in the purity of love, the kind that starts with a spark in a crowded nightclub and blossoms into a lifetime of shared dreams. I met Sierra on one of those humid summer nights, amid neon lights and the pulsating rhythm of a downtown club. She was unlike anyone I'd ever seen. A woman of rare intensity and commanding presence, with eyes that burned with confidence and secrets. Our flirtation was immediate and consuming. I was drawn to her magnetic energy and the way she effortlessly exuded power. In that moment, I never suspected that our night of passion would be just the prelude to the life we would build together. After that unforgettable night, we began a whirlwind romance. Sierra's fierce independence and alluring mystery captivated me. We traveled, celebrated in glittering high society, and soon, after a year of shared laughter and whispered promises, we were married. In public, we were the ideal couple, successful, elegant, and enviably in love. Yet, beneath that polished surface, I always sensed that Sierra held parts of herself back. I chalked it up to her need for privacy, never questioning the price of perfection. That Valentine's Day, Sierra had insisted on celebrating our anniversary with an extravagant gesture. She planned every detail with meticulous care. A dinner at an exclusive restaurant with a view of the city's sparkling skyline, soft jazz playing in the background, and, finally, an invitation to a luxurious hotel suite to continue the celebration. I trusted her implicitly. After all, wasn't the hallmark of a great romance the willingness to surrender to the unknown, to embrace passion without fear? As we entered the suite, a room draped in red velvet and lit by flickering candles, I felt a sense of anticipation mingled with unease I couldn't quite explain. The atmosphere was charged with a seductive intensity, and I assumed it was simply the elaborate setup for an unforgettable night. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to witness. There, sprawled across the soft, inviting bed were two women. My heart hammered as my eyes darted between them. One of them was Sierra, lying elegantly on her side in a silk robe that accentuated every graceful curve, her expression unreadable yet strangely inviting. The other was a striking woman I did not recognize. A confident beauty with dark, shimmering hair and eyes that sparkled with mischief. The room, once a sanctuary of our shared intimacy, had transformed into a stage for something far more complex and taboo than I could have ever imagined. Time seemed to slow as I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind struggling to reconcile the image before me with the woman I thought I knew. My pulse pounded in my ears, each beat echoing the shattering of the illusion I had so carefully built around our life. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, yet my throat closed up in a mixture of disbelief and a profound, numbing despair. Sierra's eyes met mine with a glimmer that I couldn't decipher. Was it defiance, regret, or something else entirely? In that charged silence, I sensed that this wasn't a random act of infidelity, but rather a premeditated revelation, a carefully orchestrated moment that she had designed long before I ever set foot in that room. The realization that I had married a woman who held secrets far beyond the boundaries of our public facade was as painful as it was disorienting that I retreated silently, each step away from that room echoing with the sound of my breaking heart. The seductive whispers and soft music seemed to mock my confusion, as if the very ambience of that night conspired to reveal the truth I had long denied. In the solitude of a cold, dark hallway, I allowed the shock to wash over me. Questions, sharp and unrelenting, pierced my thoughts. How long had this been going on? Was I merely a prop in her carefully curated image, a trophy husband to bolster her public persona while she pursued her true desires elsewhere? Memories flooded back to me. The way Sierra's eyes sparkled in the nightclub, the subtle hints in her laughter, the secretive glances she'd cast when we were surrounded by other attractive women. I had dismissed them as quirks of a complex personality, never imagining that they were clues to a hidden life. Now, they painted a damning portrait of a woman who had lived a double life. A woman whose passion for intimacy was not confined to our union but reached its crescendo only in the arms of other women. That night, as I huddled in the shadows of the corridor, the stark reality of betrayal settled over me like a suffocating shroud. I realized that the love I had so ardently believed in was nothing more than an elaborate performance, one in which I played a role that was never truly mine. I was left questioning my own worth and wondering if I had been blinded by the very ideal of romance that Sierra so effortlessly embodied that in the days that followed, I would find myself haunted by that night. The image of Sierra, so unapologetically entwined with another woman, and the overwhelming sense that everything I thought I knew about our marriage was a lie. I began to meticulously search for answers, piecing together every fleeting moment and subtle gesture that now seemed laden with meaning. It was a journey into a painful truth, one that forced me to confront the possibility that the woman I loved was not the person I thought she was. As I write these words, the memory of that night remains vivid. A turning point that shattered my illusions and set me on a path of discovery and, eventually, vengeance. That Valentine's Day was not a celebration of love, but the unveiling of a betrayal so profound that it would redefine the rest of my life. I knew, with a clarity that was both brutal and undeniable, that nothing would ever be the same again. And so, as I stand on the precipice of this new, uncertain reality, I can only wonder, what do we do when the foundation of our most cherished beliefs crumbles beneath us? How do we rebuild when every truth we held dear has been shattered by one fateful night? The answers, I fear, lie in the dark corners of our souls, places where love, betrayal, and the desperate need for redemption collide in a symphony of pain and bitter resolve. The shock of that unforgettable night began to fade into a surreal haze, but its echoes only grew louder with each passing day. In the aftermath, every familiar corner of our home transformed into a stage for secrets. I wandered through our once warm living room with a mounting sense of dread and curiosity. Each object, a framed photograph, a stray hair on the couch, even the lingering scent of her signature perfume, suddenly held the potential to betray a hidden truth. I recall one particular afternoon when the rain hammered against the windows of our penthouse like an ominous drumbeat. The steady patter echoed my restless thoughts. I sat alone at the dining table, a half-empty cup of coffee growing cold as my mind replayed the shocking scene from that night. My heart pounded with both fear and a twisted curiosity. How deep did this deception run? I forced myself to sift through memories, searching for clues I had once dismissed as quirks of a complicated woman. I remembered the sly smile Sierra wore at cocktail parties when surrounded by glamorous women, or the subtle way her eyes would shift whenever a seductive stranger passed by. Now, these moments glowed with dangerous significance. Determined to break free of the suffocating fog of uncertainty, I began to seek answers in the places where our lives had intertwined. I retraced our early days, the smoky, pulsating energy of that downtown nightclub where our eyes first locked, the intimacy of whispered conversations in shadowed corners, and the exhilarating nights when our passion burned with reckless abandon. Every memory was tinged with irony. The very moments I had cherished were now fraught with implications I had been too naive to see. My investigation soon led me beyond the confines of our apartment. Late one night, as the city slept beneath a shroud of neon lights and lingering fog, I found myself in the depths of a trendy bar downtown. The air buzzed with clandestine chatter and the clink of ice in glasses. I observed Sierra from afar, her laughter mingling with that of a group of elegantly dressed women whose presence seemed deliberate, their glances lingering just a moment too long. As I sipped a bitter cocktail, the bar's dim lighting revealing fragments of whispered secrets, I felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. I was both a voyeur and a victim, desperately trying to piece together the hidden narrative of my life. At one point, I intercepted a conversation between two strangers at the bar, a hushed exchange that mentioned another meeting in the city's West End, and the allure of midnight rendezvous. The cryptic words sent a shiver down my spine. Was it possible that Sierra had planned these encounters with the precision of a seasoned architect? The thought that she might orchestrate her affairs with the same finesse that had charmed me during our first passionate encounter was as painful as it was mesmerizing. Haunted by the need to know more, I embarked on a series of midnight excursions, trailing clues that led me through upscale hotels, chic lounges, and even discreet cafes hidden in the labyrinthine streets of the city. Each location bore its own mark of secrecy, a whispered promise of clandestine meetings and hidden desires. In one such hotel lobby, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure, a woman with the same enigmatic aura as Avery, the stranger from that fateful suite. She walked briskly, her eyes fixed on something or someone. In the distance, and for a fleeting second, I wondered if fate had orchestrated another meeting. The more I observed, the deeper I sank into an internal conflict that churned with emotions both raw and complex. I felt an unbearable mix of fear, humiliation, and a perverse kind of fascination. There was a twisted allure in knowing that the woman I had loved was living a life of unbridled passion, one that I had never been privy to. Yet, with each discovery, my soul ached with betrayal. I grappled with the realization that Sierra was not the woman I thought she was. She was a creature of duality, one who thrived on the forbidden and the dangerous. Her public face, elegant, composed, and commanding, had masked a wild, untamed spirit that only awakened in the presence of other women. Amid this inner turmoil, guilt began to gnaw at me. I wondered if my ignorance had contributed to her duplicity. Had I been so enamored by her strength and dominance that I turned a blind eye to the signs? Every unanswered question and every suspicious detail made me feel complicit in my own betrayal. I struggled with a paradoxical emotion, a lingering love for the woman who had once made me feel alive, intermingled with a growing contempt for the lie that had built our life together and a desperate bid for clarity. I sought solace in the one place that had always promised truth, a quiet, independent bookstore nestled in a side street of our bustling city. I spent hours poring over novels and memoirs, searching for a narrative that might mirror my own fractured reality. In the hushed corners of that store, surrounded by the rustle of pages and the murmur of other solitary souls, I felt a fleeting sense of connection. It was as if the wisdom of countless authors whispered to me, urging me to confront my inner demons and embrace the painful truth. That evening, as twilight bled into night, I sat by the window of my study, the cityscape a tapestry of flickering lights beneath an endless sky. My thoughts spiraled into a tumult of desire, shame, and the ever-present question of what I was to do next. I knew that I stood at a crossroads. On one path lay the possibility of confronting Sierra head-on, of demanding answers and risking an explosive unraveling of our already fragile bond. On the other, the lure of silent observation and accumulating evidence. Each secret rendezvous and coded message promising to reveal more about the woman I thought I knew. It was then that fate delivered an unexpected twist. I received a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the Blue Orchid at 11 tonight." The message was brief, but the urgency in its tone sent my heart racing. I hesitated. Was this a trap? Or was it perhaps a lifeline thrown into the chaos of my fractured existence? I couldn't shake the feeling that this message was a piece of a puzzle I had long been trying to solve. With trembling fingers and a racing pulse, I replied simply, "I'll be there." That decision marked a turning point. As I stepped out into the cool night air, the city seemed to pulsate with hidden energies, every shadow and glimmer of neon hinting at secrets yet to be uncovered. I made my way to the Blue Orchid, a chic, dimly lit lounge known for its discreet clientele and intimate ambience. Inside, the air was thick with whispered conversations and the gentle clink of glasses. I scanned the room, my eyes darting across faces illuminated by the soft glow of vintage sconces. Then I saw her, a woman with striking features and an air of quiet authority who seemed to be waiting for me near a secluded corner of the lounge. Her name was Harper. She introduced herself with a knowing smile, her eyes flickering with the same intensity that had first drawn me to Sierra. "I know what you're going through," she said, her voice low and compassionate. Harper explained that she, too, had once been entangled in a web of secrets and betrayal, a web spun by someone who had built their life on lies. As she spoke, the layers of her own story unfolded. A tale of forbidden love, shattered illusions, and the painful journey towards self-discovery. Her words resonated deeply within me, stirring both empathy and a spark of rebellion. Perhaps I was not alone in this labyrinth of deceit. Harper's revelations added a new dimension to my quest. She hinted at connections between Sierra's clandestine encounters and a broader network of influential figures who thrived on secrecy and scandal. The more she spoke, the more I realized that what I had once dismissed as a personal betrayal was part of something far larger. A tapestry of hidden desires and carefully guarded secrets that spanned beyond our intimate life. With each detail, Harper painted a picture of a world where passion and power intertwined in dangerous, intoxicating ways. That night, as the lounge emptied and the city's nocturnal pulse grew louder, I was left with a choice. I could retreat into the painful anonymity of my own doubts, or I could embrace the possibility of unraveling a mystery that threatened to consume me. Harper's words lingered in my mind, urging me to confront the truth head-on. In that moment, the stakes became clear. To reclaim my identity and dignity, I had to make a choice that would define the rest of my life. Returning home under a sky streaked with the first hints of dawn, I found myself at the crossroads of desire and despair. The evidence of Sierra's hidden life had grown too substantial to ignore, and my own sense of self was inextricably tied to the need for answers. I resolved to delve deeper, to document every whispered conversation, every clandestine meeting, every hint of forbidden passion. Each revelation, as painful as it was, promised to illuminate the truth behind the facade I had once believed in. As I closed my journal that night, the words of Harper echoed in my mind. There was an undeniable allure in the pursuit of truth, even if that truth was shrouded in the pain of betrayal and the bitter taste of deception. In the labyrinth of secrets and hidden desires, I had taken my first step toward understanding the woman I had loved and the life I had once thought was our shared destiny. In the days ahead, I knew that confronting Sierra would be inevitable. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. A pause before the storm that would forever change the fabric of my existence. I stood on the threshold of a new chapter, where the pain of the past would collide with the promise of revelation, and where the choices I made would set me on a path from which there was no turning back. The mounting tension finally reached its breaking point one chilly evening, when the city's neon glow barely pierced the overcast sky. I had spent weeks piecing together the fragments of Sierra's hidden life, each discovery stoking a fierce fire inside me. Now, armed with damning evidence and an unyielding resolve, I knew that the time for secrets had passed. It was time for confrontation, an explosive collision of truths that would leave nothing untouched. That evening, I arrived home early from a business trip, my heart thundering with anticipation and dread. The silence that greeted me as I pushed open the door was heavy, as though the walls themselves were bracing for what was about to unfold. I walked slowly through our spacious living room, every familiar detail now tainted by the shadow of betrayal. Photographs of happier times stared back at me, their smiles now twisted into cruel reminders of a past I no longer recognized. I found Sierra in the study, seated at her sleek desk with her laptop open, the soft glow of its screen illuminating her focused expression. For a moment, time seemed to pause. I hesitated at the doorway, swallowing a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger, sorrow, and a strange, almost defiant determination. "Sierra," I said, my voice trembling yet resolute. "We need to talk." She looked up slowly, her eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty before settling into an inscrutable calm. "Nathan," she replied coolly, setting aside the documents she was reviewing. "I've been expecting you." Her tone was measured, as though she had rehearsed this confrontation 1,000 times in her mind. But today, her practiced calm couldn't hide the tension that rippled beneath the surface. I motioned for her to sit, my hands still trembling from the weight of all I had uncovered. I pulled out my phone, its screen filled with a gallery of incriminating screenshots, voicemails, and emails. A mosaic of betrayal laid bare. "I know about the emails, the texts, the hotel meetings," I began, my voice catching on every word. "I know about Avery, about all those secret rendezvous you've been hiding from me." My words came out in a rush, a torrent of pain and accusation that filled the quiet room. For a long moment, Sierra's eyes remained fixed on mine, a storm of conflicting emotions churning within them. Then, as if a dam had broken, She leaned back and exhaled slowly. "So it has come to this," she said, almost with a hint of resignation. "You always suspected something was off, didn't you? But I never thought you'd be so determined to uncover every detail." Her voice, though measured, was laced with a bitterness that matched my OW as the conversation escalated. The air between us grew charged, each word a spark that threatened to ignite a conflagration. I laid out every piece of evidence I had collected, watching as her expression shifted from calm detachment to something far more guarded. Fear, perhaps, or regret. "I built our life on lies, Sierra," I said, my voice rising with raw emotion. "I trusted you with everything, and you used me as a prop, a placeholder while you chased after the real thrill." The words hit hard, and for a moment, silence enveloped us both. Then, unexpectedly, Sierra's eyes flashed with defiant anger. "You think you have the right to judge me?" she demanded, her tone rising in intensity. "I needed freedom, Nathan. Freedom to be who I truly am. I built this facade to survive in a world that would never accept me otherwise." There was a sudden, electric pause as she spoke, a confession wrapped in a bitter lament. "I always knew the risks, but I never imagined you'd turn your back on me so completely." Her words sent my mind spiraling. I had come here expecting to find a partner I once loved, not the shattered shell of a woman who seemed to justify her actions with cold pragmatism. The confrontation was no longer just about infidelity. It was about the very foundation of our identity, the image we had both worked so hard to cultivate. "Freedom," I echoed, incredulous. "Is that what you call this double life?" "Our marriage was never about freedom for you. It was about us presenting an image, a perfect, respectable union. I was proud of that image, Sierra. And you've torn it all down." Sierra's eyes narrowed, and for a moment the room pulsed with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "You never understood," she said in a low, bitter tone. "I had to play the part, the perfect wife, to get what I needed. My work, my reputation, they depend on that image. You were simply part of the performance." She paused, her gaze flickering toward the window as if searching for escape. "But tonight, I want you to see me as I truly am. I'm not the woman you fell in love with, Nathan. I'm someone else entirely. A woman with desires that you can't possibly comprehend." The air grew heavy with the weight of our revelations. Outside, the wind howled as if echoing the turmoil within our home. In that moment, the tension was so palpable I could almost taste it. A mixture of fear, sorrow, and a raw, unfiltered desire for truth. I struggled to contain my anger, but the evidence of her betrayal was overwhelming, and every suppressed emotion surged forth like a tidal wave. "So what now?" I demanded. "Do you expect me to just accept this? To continue living a lie?" Before she could answer, the sound of a door creaking open shattered the fragile silence. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to see a figure emerging from the hallway, a figure I hadn't expected to see tonight. It was Harper, the mysterious confidant I had met at the Blue Orchid, her eyes wide with shock as she took in the scene. "Nathan! Sierra?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the tumultuous beating of my heart. Her sudden appearance added another layer of complexity, as if fate itself was toying with our already fragile equilibrium. Sierra's eyes darted toward Harper, and for a split second, I saw vulnerability there, a momentary lapse in her steely composure. "Harper, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone sharp. Harper hesitated, then spoke softly. "I had to come. I knew something was wrong. I'm sorry, Nathan. I didn't mean to intrude." But even as she apologized, the tension in the room mounted further, weaving a web of intrigue that threatened to pull us all into its vortex. At that moment, as the three of us stood in the charged silence of the study, the full weight of our intertwined secrets bore down upon us. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions: rage, betrayal, and a strange, desperate need for closure. The confrontation had evolved from a private reckoning between a husband and wife into a broader collision of lives and hidden truths. Every glance exchanged, every barely concealed emotion, screamed of an impending storm that none of us could escape. "Yes, yes, yes," I murmured under my breath, a desperate, almost instinctive exclamation that echoed the chaotic rhythm of my heart. It was a sound of disbelief, of acceptance that we had all reached a point of no return. The truth was out, and now there was no going back. That I took a deep breath and fixed my gaze on Sierra, my eyes hard and unwavering. I'm done pretending, Sierra. I can't live in this illusion any longer, I declared. In that instant, I knew that our conversation was not the end but merely the beginning of something far more dangerous. A descent into a labyrinth of secrets and desires that threatened to consume us all. As the storm outside intensified, so too did the conflict within. Harper's presence, though unintentional, had shattered the remaining calm, and I could sense that the night's revelations were only the tip of the iceberg. Our conversation teetered on the edge of an explosive climax, one where every secret, every betrayal, would be laid bare without mercy. Yet, as I stared at Sierra, a part of me still clung to the hope that I might somehow reclaim the love I once believed in, even as the undeniable evidence of her true self loomed like a dark shadow between us. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the very walls were closing in on us. I realized with a sinking certainty that the confrontation was inevitable, that the cascade of revelations would force each of us to confront the consequences of our actions. The intricate tapestry of hidden desires and carefully guarded lies was unraveling before my eyes, and there was no stopping the torrent of truth. And so, in that charged moment, with Harper standing silently in the background and the night bearing witness to our unraveling, I made a choice. I would no longer allow the past to be a silent specter haunting my every step. The time for half-truths was over. I would force an end to this charade, even if it meant shattering the remaining pieces of my shattered heart. Tell me, I demanded, my voice echoing with a mixture of challenge and despair. Tell me everything, Sierra. Leave nothing unsaid. Her eyes flickered for just an instant, a moment of vulnerability quickly masked by steely resolve. I will, Nathan, she replied quietly, as if accepting her fate. But know this. Once I reveal everything, there will be no turning back. In that moment, the fragile balance between love and betrayal teetered on the edge of an abyss. With the storm outside mirroring the chaos within, I braced myself for the revelations that were about to come. The night was far from over, and the cascade of truths, both painful and shocking, was poised to reshape our lives forever. The tension that had been building for weeks finally burst on a rain-soaked night. Every secret, every hidden meeting, and every painful revelation led to this singular moment. I had spent days compiling irrefutable evidence of Sierra's double life, and now, standing alone in our dimly lit living room, I knew nothing would ever be the same. After the explosive confrontation earlier that day, Sierra had retreated to our bedroom. I sat in the silence of the living room, replaying the evidence and her cold confession in my mind. The room was heavy with unresolved emotions, a blend of raw betrayal and a reluctant longing for the passion we once shared. My heart was pounding as I finally decided that no more illusions could save us. Gathering my courage, I crossed the threshold and entered the bedroom. The soft, flickering light cast long shadows on the walls, emphasizing the stark divide between what we had been and what we were now. Sierra was standing by the window, her profile etched against the rainy backdrop. Her eyes, once so full of fire and promise, now held only a distant, defeated sadness. Before we could exchange a word, the sudden, jarring ring of the telephone shattered the fragile silence. I froze, my pulse racing, as the sound echoed in the stillness of the room. With a heavy heart, I picked up the receiver. The voice on the other end was cold and measured, a voice I recognized all too well. "Nathan, this is Judith," said Sierra's mother, her tone laced with quiet menace. I barely managed a reply as her words sank in. "You thought exposing everything would free you both, but you've only unleashed a reckoning far beyond your control," Judith continued, each word slicing through the remnants of any hope I might have had for reconciliation. Sierra's eyes widened in shock as she reached for the phone. "I never intended for any of this to happen," she whispered, her voice trembling with regret and fear. But Judith was relentless. "Your lies have consequences, Sierra. The facade you maintained has cost our family dearly. And now, Everyone involved will pay the price. The call ended abruptly, leaving only a suffocating silence in its wake. In that instant, everything changed. The intimacy and tension we had built up evaporated, replaced by a chilling certainty that our private betrayal had become a public curse. The seductive promise of a second chance was irretrievably shattered. I stepped back, feeling the weight of Judith's threat sinking into every fiber of my being. Sierra's gaze, once so defiant, now shimmered with despair. We stood there in the dim light, two figures bound by secrets and regret. I knew then that our shared history, filled with both passion and lies, had reached its irrevocable end. The life I had once envisioned with Sierra was nothing more than a beautiful illusion, now dismantled by the cold hand of truth. With a heavy heart and a voice barely above a whisper, I vowed, I will never be your pawn again. In that final moment, as the rain hammered against the window and our shattered dreams lay scattered around us, I realized that the true reckoning had only just begun. The echoes of that call, and Judith's unyielding promise of retribution, would haunt me forever. But one thing was certain. The path ahead would be defined not by our lost love, but by the relentless pursuit of truth and the bitter price of betrayal. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this journey, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories like this one. Got thoughts or experiences you'd like to share? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.